Welcome back to the channel everyone. I'm genuinely excited you're here today because we're diving into a story that sounds almost unbelievable, the kind of story that turns pocket change into legend and makes people everywhere stop and recheck their jars, drawers, and old piggy banks. And that is the story of the 2011 1-cent coin that has been whispered about in collector circles as being worth up to $14 million because of its errors, mistakes, and the incredible possibilities surrounding how it was made, how it slipped through quality control, and how rarity, timing, and human imperfection can combine to create something so valuable that it completely reshapes how we think about modern coins. And before we go any further, remember that stories like this are why coin collecting remains one of the most fascinating hobbies on the planet, because even in an age of digital money and mass production, tiny pieces of metal can still carry mystery, drama, and staggering potential value. And the 2011 cent is one of the most talked about examples of that phenomenon, not because every 2011 cent is special, but because of the idea that a very small number, possibly even a single example, could exist with a unique combination of errors so extreme and so improbable that it challenges everything we think we know about minting processes, quality control, and modern coin rarity. And to understand why a simple penny dated 2011 with a D mint mark could even be mentioned in the same breath as multi-million-dollar valuations, we need to step back and look at how pennies are made, what usually goes wrong, and why most errors are minor while a few rare ones are capable of creating life-changing value. Because the Denver Mint in 2011 produced billions of 1-cent coins, most of them completely ordinary, struck on zinc cores with copper plating, using highly automated, high-speed presses designed to minimize mistakes, and yet even in these controlled environments, errors still happen, and when they do, they tend to fall into categories such as planchet errors, die errors, striking errors, or post-strike errors. But the coin at the center of this legend is said to involve not just one mistake, but a cascade of multiple, compounding errors that theoretically should never coexist on a single coin, and that is where the story becomes truly fascinating. Because rarity in coin collecting is not just about low mintage numbers, it is about improbability, and the more improbable a combination of errors becomes, the more collectors are willing to pay to own it, especially when that combination appears on a modern coin where such mistakes are supposed to have been eliminated by technology. So the first alleged issue that makes the 2011 cent so valuable is the idea that it may have been struck on the wrong planchet, specifically a planchet intended for a completely different denomination or even a different metal composition, such as a bronze or copper alloy blank that should not have been used for cents in 2011, because by that year, US cents had long been made of zinc with a thin copper coating, and the accidental use of an older-style bronze planchet would immediately raise eyebrows. But the story goes even further, suggesting that the coin may have been struck on a planchet that was not only wrong in composition, but also wrong in thickness and weight, possibly intended for a foreign coin or an experimental test piece. And if such a planchet somehow made its way into the Denver Mint cent production line, survived multiple inspection stages, and was struck with cent dies, it would already be extraordinary. But then comes the claim that the dies themselves may have been flawed, misaligned, or even mismatched, producing doubled features, distorted lettering, or missing design elements. And when you imagine a coin that shows extreme doubling on the date, Liberty, and in God We Trust, combined with a misaligned or rotated reverse, you start to see how collectors would consider such a piece almost mythological in nature, because doubling alone is common in minor forms, but extreme, true doubled dies on modern coins are rare, and when they appear, they can command significant premiums even without other errors, so adding that to an already wrong planchet dramatically increases desirability. But the legend of the $14 million 2011 cent does not stop there, because another layer of intrigue comes from the possibility of a mule error, which is when a coin is struck with obverse and reverse dies that were never intended to be paired together. And while mule errors are known in US coinage, they are extremely rare in the modern era, and the idea that a 2011 cent could feature an obverse or reverse design meant for a different year, different denomination, or even a different country pushes the boundaries of what collectors believe is possible. Yet history shows that improbable things do happen, such as the famous Sacagawea dollar and Washington quarter mule that sold for enormous sums, proving that modern minting systems are not immune to human or mechanical error, and if a cent were discovered that combined a Lincoln obverse with a reverse not meant for cents at all, the numismatic world would be shaken. But even without a full mule, subtle die mismatches can create significant interest, especially if the reverse shows unusual spacing, incorrect font details, or elements that should not exist for that year. And then there is the question of striking pressure and alignment, because an off-center strike of extreme magnitude, combined with full date and mint mark visibility, is already valuable. But if that off-center strike occurs on a wrong planchet with doubled dies, the result becomes something that defies conventional price guides. And collectors often say that price guides break down entirely when dealing with unique or nearly unique errors, because there is no comparable sale, and value becomes whatever the highest bidder is willing to pay, which is how numbers like $14 million even enter the conversation, not as a guaranteed price, but as a hypothetical ceiling driven by wealthy collectors competing for a once-in-a-lifetime piece. And speaking of the mint mark, the D on a 2011 cent signifies Denver. And mint marks themselves can be the source of errors, including repunched mint marks, missing mint marks, or mint marks that appear doubled or misplaced. And although repunched mint marks are more common on older coins, a modern example showing extreme mint mark distortion would be highly unusual. And if the D mint mark appeared in an incorrect location, partially missing, or doubled in a dramatic way, it would add yet another layer of rarity. And what truly fuels the $14 million valuation narrative is the idea that all of these things could exist on a single coin, creating what collectors sometimes call a perfect storm error, a coin that should not exist according to the rules of minting, yet somehow does, and because of that, it becomes not just a collectible, but a story, a conversation piece, and a symbol of how even in an era of precision manufacturing, chance and chaos still have a role to play, and collectors are not just buying metal, they are buying that story, that improbability, and the bragging rights that come with owning something no one else can replicate. And another factor that drives the value discussion is condition, because errors are often found in circulated condition, damaged, or worn. But the legendary 2011 D cent is often imagined as being in pristine or near pristine condition, possibly discovered straight from a mint roll or bag before it ever entered circulation. And condition matters enormously in numismatics, because a high-grade example allows all the error details to be clearly visible, making authentication easier and display more impressive. And a coin that combines extreme errors with exceptional preservation becomes exponentially more desirable. And that leads us to authentication, because no coin, no matter how spectacular it appears, can command millions without being verified by top-tier grading services. And part of the fascination with the 2011 D cent story is the idea that such a coin would undergo intense scrutiny, microscopic analysis, metallurgical testing, and die study to confirm that its features are genuine mint errors rather than post-mint alterations. And the fact that a coin could potentially pass all those tests only adds to its mystique, because it would mean that the minting process truly produced something unprecedented. And collectors love precedent-breaking pieces, because they expand the boundaries of what is known and documented. And the conversation about value also involves the broader coin market, because while $14 million sounds outrageous for a penny, history shows that unique coins can sell for far more, with certain gold coins, patterns, and errors commanding prices well into the tens of millions. So when collectors discuss a hypothetical valuation for a unique modern error, they are not pulling numbers out of thin air, they are extrapolating from past sales, rarity, demand, and the presence of ultra-wealthy collectors who view such coins as alternative investments or historical artifacts. And another important element is publicity, because a coin that captures media attention, appears in documentaries, articles, and viral videos, can see its perceived value skyrocket simply because more people want it. And the story of a 2011 D cent worth $14 million is inherently viral, because it challenges common assumptions and invites everyone to check their change. Next, 2021 1 cent. Today, because what we're about to explore is one of those jaw-dropping stories that sits right at the intersection of mystery, rumor, real numismatic science, and the endless fascination people have with pocket change. And if you've ever looked at a penny and wondered whether it could secretly be worth a fortune, then this deep dive is made exactly for you. Because today we're talking about the astonishing claim that a 2021 1-cent coin could be valued as high as $15 million due to a perfect storm of errors, mistakes, anomalies, and rare circumstances. And while this kind of valuation lives in the realm of extreme possibility rather than everyday reality, understanding why collectors even entertain such numbers opens the door to how coins become priceless artifacts, how minting errors can transform common objects into legends, and how a modern coin can spark debates that echo across the numismatic world. The 2021 1-cent coin at first glance appears completely ordinary, bearing the familiar Abraham Lincoln portrait that has graced the penny for generations, struck primarily at the Philadelphia and Denver mints during a time of unprecedented global disruption, and composed of the same copper-plated zinc planchet that has been standard since the early 1980s. Yet it is precisely the environment in which these coins were produced that fuels the story, because the year 2021 followed a period of shutdown, staffing shortages, accelerated production schedules, and altered quality control processes, and collectors know that when the minting process is stressed even slightly, the chances of dramatic errors increase, sometimes resulting in coins that should never have existed leaving the mint and entering circulation unnoticed. The $15 million figure often associated with this 2021 cent is not a confirmed sale price but rather a speculative peak valuation tied to the theoretical existence of an extreme multi-layer error scenario, a coin that would combine several of the most valuable minting mistakes ever documented into a single example, something so unlikely that its mere possibility captivates collectors. Because history shows that coins with just one major error can sell for 6 or 7 figures, and when you start stacking multiple catastrophic anomalies together, the potential value rises exponentially in theory. One of the most discussed possibilities is a 2021 penny struck on the wrong planchet, specifically one intended for a completely different denomination or even a foreign coin blank, and while wrong planchet errors are known and documented, the idea of a 2021 cent struck on a gold planchet or a high-purity silver or platinum blank originally prepared for experimental or commemorative purposes pushes the value into uncharted territory, especially if the metal composition could be verified and traced back to a mint mishap rather than post-mint alteration, because a genuine wrong metal strike involving precious metal combined with a modern date would be almost unheard of and would immediately be classified as a museum-level discovery. Another layer of intrigue comes from double die errors, which occur when the coin die itself receives multiple misaligned impressions during its creation, resulting in double details on the finished coin, and while minor doubling is relatively common and often misunderstood, a dramatic Class 1 double die showing bold separation on Lincoln's portrait, the date, the word liberty, and the motto could rival the most famous double dies in history, and if such an error existed on a 2021 cent with extreme clarity, it would already command enormous attention. Yet the hypothetical $15 million coin goes further by imagining a double die paired with an off-center strike so severe that part of the design is missing while still retaining a full readable date, something that collectors prize because it proves the coin's identity while showcasing the chaos of its creation. The possibility of a mule error also enters the conversation, and a mule occurs when the obverse and reverse dies are not meant to be paired together, such as a Lincoln cent obverse combined with a reverse from a completely different coin series or even a different year, and while mules are rare, they do exist, including modern examples that have sold for staggering sums. So the idea of a 2021 cent obverse paired with, for example, a pre-1959 wheat reverse or an entirely unrelated design fuels the imagination, because it would represent a breakdown in mint safeguards that should prevent such combinations, and the more historically incongruent the pairing, the higher the potential interest. Then there is the concept of a transitional error, which happens when the mint changes metal composition or design and leftover materials are accidentally used after the transition period, and although no official transition occurred in 2021 for the penny, speculative discussions imagine scenarios involving experimental alloys tested quietly behind the scenes. And if a 2021 cent were proven to be struck on an unannounced experimental planchet, it would instantly become a numismatic anomaly of the highest order, because collectors place immense value on coins that reveal hidden chapters of mint history that were never meant for public knowledge. Beyond planchets and dies, the striking process itself can produce errors so dramatic that they redefine what a coin looks like, such as multiple strikes where a coin is struck 2 or more times in different positions or orientations, and while most multiple strikes are visually chaotic, a perfectly aligned dramatic multiple strike that still preserves a full date and mint mark can be breathtaking. And when combined with a rotated die error where the reverse is turned significantly off its normal alignment, the visual impact multiplies, turning a simple penny into a complex piece of mechanical art that documents each violent moment of its creation. Collectors also speculate about the existence of a 2021 cent struck through foreign material so unusual that it becomes legendary, such as a coin struck through a piece of mint equipment metal cloth or even another planchet, leaving behind a void or embedded fragment that can be scientifically analyzed. Because struck through errors provide direct physical evidence of what went wrong inside the mint at a specific moment, and the rarer and more identifiable the foreign object, the more valuable the coin becomes, especially when documentation and metallurgical testing can confirm its authenticity beyond doubt. Another contributing factor to the extreme valuation theory is condition, because even the most dramatic error loses value if the coin is damaged or worn, whereas a flawless uncirculated or proof-like example preserved exactly as it left the mint elevates its desirability to elite collectors who demand perfection. And the idea of a perfect storm error preserved in pristine condition is one of the reasons numbers like $15 million are even spoken aloud, because at that level buyers are not just purchasing a coin but a once-in-a-generation artifact. Provenance also plays a massive role, because if such a coin were discovered in a sealed mint bag roll or official set and its journey from the mint to discovery could be clearly documented, skepticism would diminish and confidence would rise. And in the world of high-value collectibles, confidence is everything, since a single unresolved doubt can cut value dramatically, while ironclad proof can send prices soaring beyond expectations. Media attention and narrative amplify value as well, because coins that capture public imagination often transcend traditional collecting circles, attracting investors, museums and institutions, and the story of an ordinary 2021 penny found in circulation and later revealed to be a multimillion-dollar anomaly is exactly the kind of narrative that spreads rapidly, creating demand far beyond the usual numismatic audience, and when multiple wealthy bidders compete not just for ownership but for the prestige of possessing such an object, prices can reach levels that once seemed impossible. It's also important to understand that extreme valuations are often theoretical upper limits rather than guaranteed outcomes, based on comparisons to historic sales such as the 1943 bronze cent or the 1933 double eagle, coins whose values were shaped by rarity, legality and decades of myth-making. And by placing a hypothetical 2021 cent into that lineage, collectors explore how modern errors could one day be viewed with the same reverence, especially as minting technology becomes more advanced and major errors become even rarer over time. Critics argue that the $15 million figure is exaggerated, pointing out that no confirmed example with all these errors has ever surfaced, and that many supposed discoveries turn out to be altered coins or misunderstood damage, yet even skeptics acknowledge that the minting disruptions of the early 2020s create fertile ground for unprecedented anomalies, and that history has repeatedly surprised the collecting world with finds once deemed impossible. The fascination also lies in accessibility, because unlike ancient gold coins locked in museums, the penny is something anyone can encounter, and the idea that a life-changing discovery could be sitting unnoticed in a jar of spare change keeps people searching, learning and engaging with numismatics, which in turn strengthens the hobby and preserves knowledge about how money is made and how it sometimes goes wrong. Next, 2017 P1 cent coin. Today, because this is one of those stories that makes people stop whatever they're doing and start checking their pockets, jars, drawers, and old rolls of change, and if you've ever wondered how an everyday coin could possibly be worth more than mansions, supercars, or even small islands, then you're in exactly the right place. Because today we're diving deep into the fascinating and controversial idea that a 2017 P1 cent coin could be valued as high as $13 million due to a rare convergence of minting errors, production mistakes, extreme anomalies, and theoretical possibilities that push the boundaries of modern numismatics. And while this valuation exists at the outer edge of what collectors consider possible rather than common reality, understanding how such a number could even be discussed reveals just how powerful rarity, error mechanics, historical context, And human psychology can be when they collide in a single object as humble as a penny. At first glance, the 2017 P. Lincoln cent looks completely ordinary, featuring the familiar portrait of Abraham Lincoln on the obverse and the Union Shield reverse design introduced in 2010, struck at the Philadelphia Mint, which notably does not use a mint mark on cents, and composed of the standard copper-plated zinc planchet that has been used for decades. But what makes the year 2017 especially intriguing to collectors is the production environment surrounding it, because the mid to late 2010s were a period of massive output demands, tight production schedules, aging machinery, and increasing reliance on automated systems that, while efficient, can occasionally allow rare and dramatic mistakes to slip through unnoticed, especially when multiple safeguards fail at once. The idea of a $13 million valuation for a 2017 P cent is rooted in the theoretical existence of a coin that combines several of the most valuable error types ever documented into one example, something so statistically unlikely that it borders on unbelievable, yet history has shown repeatedly that the minting process, even in the modern era, is not immune to astonishing failures. And when those failures intersect in just the right way, they can create objects that redefine what collectors thought was possible. One of the most important elements in this valuation scenario is the possibility of a wrong planchet error involving an extraordinarily rare or valuable metal, because while wrong planchet cents are known, such as cents struck on dime or foreign coin blanks, the hypothetical 2017 P cent that fuels $13 million discussions is imagined as being struck on a planchet never intended for circulation at all, such as an experimental alloy blank, a precious metal test planchet, or even a gold or platinum blank prepared for internal testing. And if such a coin were authenticated, it would instantly become one of the most important modern mint errors ever discovered, because it would represent not just a mistake but physical evidence of internal mint processes that are rarely exposed to the public. The metal composition alone could elevate the coin into the stratosphere of value, especially if laboratory testing confirmed that the planchet originated from official mint stock rather than post-mint alteration, because collectors and institutions place enormous weight on provenance and authenticity, and a genuine wrong metal strike from a modern year would be seen as a once-in-a-lifetime discovery. Layered onto this is the possibility of a dramatic double die error, which occurs during the die creation process when the hub impresses the die multiple times out of alignment, resulting in duplicated design elements on every coin struck from that die. And while minor doubling is often mistaken for damage, a true strong double die shows clear separation and rounded secondary images. And if a 2017 P cent existed with extreme doubling on Lincoln's eye, profile, date, and inscriptions, it would already be a major find, but the $13 million theory imagines doubling so bold and perfectly preserved that it rivals or exceeds the most famous double dies in American history, turning a modern penny into a direct descendant of legendary varieties that collectors have chased for generations. Off-center striking adds another layer of fascination, because when a coin is struck off-center but still retains a full readable date and design elements, it becomes exponentially more desirable, and a dramatic off-center error combined with a double die would already be considered extraordinary, yet the imagined coin goes further by retaining exceptional eye appeal, sharp detail, and pristine surfaces, something that rarely happens with coins that experience such chaotic striking conditions. Another element often discussed is the possibility of a mule error, which involves the accidental pairing of mismatched obverse and reverse dies, and while mules are among the rarest mint errors, they have occurred even in modern times, and a 2017 P. Lincoln cent obverse paired with a reverse from a completely different series, denomination, or even an earlier or later design would instantly rewrite what collectors know about mint safeguards, because such an error would require multiple layers of failure in die handling and installation, and the more historically incompatible the pairing, the more valuable the coin would become. Rotated die errors also factor into the valuation scenario, because when the reverse is rotated significantly from its normal orientation, especially by 90 degrees or 180 degrees, it adds mechanical intrigue and visual impact, and while rotated dies alone are not extremely rare, combining a dramatic rotation with other major errors multiplies the rarity exponentially, creating a coin that tells a complex story of mechanical misalignment and procedural breakdown. Strike-through errors are another major contributor to the $13 million discussion, particularly those involving unusual or identifiable foreign material, because when a coin is struck through debris or an object present in the press, it captures a negative impression of that object, and if the material can be identified as part of mint equipment or a unique substance, it becomes a direct snapshot of a specific moment in mint history, and a 2017 piece cent struck through an identifiable piece of internal mint material, combined with other errors, would be considered an irreplaceable artifact rather than just a collectible. Multiple strike errors push the narrative even further, because coins that are struck more than once in different positions or orientations provide a dramatic visual record of repeated mechanical failure, and while most multiple strike coins are messy and damaged, the hypothetical high-value 2017 cent would display multiple clear strikes with preserved design elements and minimal distortion, something that would require an almost impossible alignment of circumstances, yet that very improbability is what fuels speculation about extreme value. Condition plays an enormous role in pushing a coin into eight-figure territory, because even the rarest error loses much of its appeal if it is worn, corroded, or damaged, whereas a flawless uncirculated or proof-like example preserved exactly as it left the mint becomes a trophy piece for elite collectors. And the idea of a perfect storm error surviving in pristine condition is central to the $13 million narrative. Provenance and documentation are equally critical, because a coin of such importance would need a clear and convincing chain of custody, ideally beginning with its discovery in an original mint-sealed source such as a bag or roll, and every step of its journey would need to be documented to eliminate doubts of tampering or fabrication, since skepticism increases in direct proportion to claimed value, and only overwhelming evidence can overcome that skepticism at the highest levels of the market. The cultural and psychological factors behind such valuations are just as important as the technical ones, because coins that capture public imagination often transcend traditional numismatic boundaries, attracting attention from investors, museums, historians, and the general public, and the idea that a 2017 penny, something millions of people handled without a second thought, could be worth $13 million creates a narrative so compelling that it amplifies demand and interest far beyond normal collecting circles. Media coverage plays a powerful role in this amplification, because stories of extraordinary find spread rapidly, and once a coin becomes part of popular culture, its value can escalate in ways that pure rarity alone could never achieve, especially when wealthy buyers compete not just for ownership but for the prestige and legacy associated with possessing a once-in-a-generation object. Auction dynamics further influence these numbers, because the right auction house with global reach and credibility can legitimize extreme estimates and attract bidders who might otherwise dismiss them, and competitive bidding fueled by ego, publicity, and historical significance has repeatedly pushed prices far beyond conservative expectations in the past. It's also important to understand that figures like $13 million are often theoretical ceilings rather than guaranteed outcomes, based on comparisons to historic coins such as the 1943 bronze cent or the 1933 double eagle. Last. 1991 1-cent coin, today, because what we're about to talk about sounds unbelievable at first, and that's exactly why it captures the imagination of collectors, treasure hunters, history lovers, and anyone who has ever looked down at spare change and wondered if something ordinary could secretly be extraordinary. So settle in and let your curiosity switch on as we explore the story, the mystery, and the mind-bending possibilities behind the idea that a simple 1991 1-cent coin could be worth as much as $11 million, not because it was meant to be special, not because it was made of gold, but because of errors, mistakes, accidents, and rare circumstances that transformed a humble penny into a symbol of how imperfection can sometimes create astonishing value. And to understand how something like this could even be possible, we need to step back and remember that coins are mass-produced objects made by machines operated by humans, and whenever humans and machines work together at high speed, tiny errors can slip through, and when those errors intersect with rarity, demand, historical context, and collector psychology, the results can be explosive in terms of value, and that's exactly where the 1991 1-cent enters the conversation. Because while millions upon millions of pennies were struck that year, only a microscopic number could theoretically contain the right combination of mistakes to elevate them from pocket change to legendary status, and one of the Most talked about possibilities involves a wrong planchet error, where a penny intended to be struck on a copper-plated zinc planchet was instead struck on a planchet meant for a completely different denomination or even a different metal composition, and in 1991 the US Mint was handling multiple coin types simultaneously, meaning the potential for a stray blank slipping into the wrong production stream was real. And if a 1991 cent were struck on a bronze planchet leftover from earlier years, or even on a foreign planchet or experimental alloy, that alone could make it extremely rare, but rarity is only the first ingredient, because collectors also care deeply about condition, and if such an error coin somehow survived decades of circulation without heavy wear, corrosion, or damage, its desirability would multiply dramatically. And then there's the possibility of a double die error, which occurs when the die used to strike the coin receives a misaligned or repeated impression from the hub, resulting in doubling on letters, numbers, or design elements. And while many double dies are subtle and modestly valuable, the truly dramatic ones can be life-changing, and if a 1991 cent exhibited bold, unmistakable doubling on the date, the word Liberty, or in God We Trust, combined with other errors, it would immediately stand out as something special. And that's where the idea of compound errors comes into play, because a single error can be valuable, but multiple errors on the same coin are exponentially rarer, and collectors are known to pay astonishing premiums for coins that showcase more than one type of mint mistake, such as a double die combined with an off-center strike, a clipped planchet, or a wrong metal composition. And when people talk about an $11 million penny, they're usually imagining a perfect storm of such anomalies all present on one coin, something so statistically unlikely that it borders on miraculous. And another factor that fuels the valuation discussion is the possibility of a transitional error, which happens when the mint changes materials, designs, or specifications and a small number of coins are struck using the wrong setup. And while 1991 wasn't a major transition year like 1982 when the composition changed, transitional errors can still occur due to leftover materials, experimental testing, or miscommunication within the minting process. And if evidence suggested that a 1991 cent was struck using an unauthorized or undocumented metal composition, especially one heavier or more valuable than standard copper-plated zinc, the numismatic world would take notice instantly. And then there's the legendary concept of mule coins, which are coins struck with mismatched dies, such as a penny obverse paired with a die intended for a completely different coin or even a different country. And while mules are extremely rare, they do exist. And when they are discovered, they often rewrite what we thought was possible within a given year's production. And a confirmed 1991 cent mule featuring an unexpected reverse design would not just be valuable, it would be historically significant. And historical significance is another major driver of price, because collectors aren't just buying metal, they're buying stories. And a coin that forces experts to question official mint records or revise their understanding of production practices becomes a centerpiece of conversation, study, and desire, and value also grows. When a coin captures public imagination beyond hardcore collectors, because when mainstream media, documentaries, and viral stories start circulating, demand can skyrocket, and suddenly wealthy investors, museums, and private foundations want to own the coin not just as a collectible, but as a cultural artifact. And that's where multi-million-dollar valuations start to feel less impossible, especially when you consider that other coins have sold for comparable or even higher amounts under the right circumstances. And even though there may not be a publicly confirmed sale of a 1991 penny for $11 million, the discussion persists because valuation is often based on theoretical maximums, private offers, and what something could sell for if the perfect buyer met the perfect coin at the perfect moment. And collectors often speculate by comparing hypothetical error coins to known record holders, asking questions like what if a 1991 cent had the dramatic double die of the 1955 penny, the wrong metal composition of the 1943 copper cent, and the pristine condition of a museum-grade specimen. And while that combination may sound like fantasy, numismatics has a long history of surprising discoveries that once seemed impossible. And another layer to this story involves authentication, because for a coin to reach such a staggering valuation, it would need to be rigorously examined and verified by multiple independent experts, using advanced tools like X-ray fluorescence to confirm metal composition, high-resolution imaging to analyze die characteristics, and archival research to rule out hoaxes or post-mint alterations, and the fact that such scrutiny exists both protects the market and adds to the drama, because every time a new potential error coin surfaces, it ignites debate, skepticism, excitement, and hope is a powerful force, because it encourages people to search through jars of pennies, inherited collections, and forgotten drawers, believing that lightning could strike twice, and even if the odds are astronomically low, the cost of looking is almost nothing, and that dynamic alone keeps stories like the $11 million 1991 cent alive. And it's also worth considering how condition grading plays into valuation, because a coin graded at the absolute top of the scale can be worth many times more than the same coin with minor flaws. And if a rare error penny from 1991 somehow survived in near-perfect or perfect condition, untouched by circulation, moisture, or handling, its value would leap forward dramatically. And then there's the psychology of uniqueness, because collectors are often willing to pay extraordinary amounts to own something that no one else can, and if a particular 1991 cent were truly one of a kind, with no known equals or competitors, that exclusivity alone could justify an extreme price in the eyes of a billionaire collector who wants to own a piece of numismatic legend. And when we talk about billions and millions, it's important to remember that the high-end collectibles market operates by different rules than everyday buying and selling, because prices are often set not by intrinsic value but by prestige, bragging rights, and the emotional satisfaction of ownership. And in that world, $11 million can be seen as a reasonable price for an object that represents a once-in-a-lifetime convergence of error, rarity, and narrative, and the narrative of the 1991 penny is especially compelling because it comes from a time when people rarely paid attention to cents, when inflation had already eroded much of their purchasing power, making the idea that one of them could be worth more than mansions, supercars, or private islands feel deliciously ironic. And irony adds to appeal, because it reinforces the notion that value is not always where we expect it to be, and that everyday objects can carry hidden potential, and that message resonates deeply with audiences, especially in a world where people are constantly searching for opportunities, meaning, and surprise. And another reason the story persists is because the minting process itself is incredibly complex, involving thousands of steps, inspections, and quality controls, and yet history shows that no system is perfect, and when an imperfection slips through, it becomes a tangible reminder of human fallibility, frozen in metal. And collectors often describe error coins as snapshots of a moment when something went wrong in a fascinating way, and that philosophical angle adds depth to their appeal. And when you combine philosophy with economics, history, science, and a dash of mystery, you get a story that people want to tell and retell, and that storytelling element can directly influence value.